What happens when a mother and her grown son cross an unspoken line? In the quiet of their old house, Memphis grapples with the shifting dynamics of her relationship with Jericho, whose lingering looks and teasing words ignite a tension she never anticipated. As the boundaries blur, both are forced to confront feelings that threaten to unravel their bond. Will they be able to navigate the complexities of love and identity? Or will it all come crashing down? Stay tuned to find out. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more captivating stories. The day Jericho looked at me as though I was no longer his mother, I burned the biscuits and blamed it on the oven. By the end of the week, however, I had come to understand exactly what he was after, and it forced me to draw a line I never thought I'd need to. I'm Memphis, 55, and I've been managing this creaky, old house on the outskirts of Juniper Hollow for longer than I care to admit. It's just Jericho and me now. My 26-year-old son, full of sharp edges and restless energy, ever since his father left when he was barely old enough to tie his shoes. Back then, I could fix his world with a scraped knee and a bedtime story. Now he's a man, and there's an unspoken tension growing between us. A current that I can't seem to turn off no matter how hard I try. It all started on a Saturday in early October. One of those crisp mornings where the air bites just enough to wake you up. I was up before dawn, as usual, moving around the kitchen in my worn blue robe, my hair still damp from the shower. The coffee maker was bubbling, filling the room with its bitter scent. And I decided on biscuits. Something simple, something to keep my hands busy and my mind quiet. The oven hummed gently as it preheated, and I was kneading the dough when Jericho came in. He had been out running, like he does most mornings, and slipped through the back door, shirtless, sweat glistening on his chest, dark hair sticking to his forehead. At first, he didn't say anything, just grabbed a glass from the cupboard and filled it at the sink. His movements were slow and purposeful. I kept my attention on the dough, pressing my palms into it harder than necessary, trying to center myself. "Morning, Memphis," he said at last, his voice raspy from the run. He stopped calling me Mum years ago, saying my name suited me better, like I was more than just the woman who raised him. It's a small thing, but it sticks with me, like a pebble in my shoe that I can't shake loose. "Morning," I muttered, glancing up for just a second. He was leaning against the counter now, glass in hand, watching me. Not in the distracted, hungry way he used to when he was a kid waiting for breakfast, but in a steady, dark way, as though he was studying me. It made my robe feel thinner than it should have been. I tugged at the collar, heat creeping up my neck. "You're up early," he remarked, taking a slow sip of water, his eyes never leaving mine. Couldn't sleep," I answered, turning back to the dough. "Figured I'd get ahead." He didn't respond immediately, just stood there. The silence stretched on, a weight pressing down on me. I could hear the drip of the faucet, the faint ticking of the clock above the stove. Then he stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the salt of his sweat, mixing with the cedar of the cologne he's worn, since he started caring about such things. My hands faltered. "Need help?" he asked, his voice soft, almost teasing, and it threw me more than it should have. A clump of dough stuck to my fingers, and I wiped it off on my apron, avoiding his gaze. "I've got it," I said, more sharply than I meant to. "Go clean up. You're a mess." He chuckled, low and easy, and it hit me right in the chest. "You sure?" You look like you could use an extra pair of hands. I shot him a look, one that was meant to be stern, motherly. But he just grinned that crooked smile he's had since he was a boy. Only now it carried something heavier, something I couldn't quite pinpoint. Jericho, I warned. But it came out softer than I'd wanted. He raised his hands in mock surrender. All right, he said, backing off. I'll shower. Don't burn the place down while I'm gone. Then he disappeared down the hall, and I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The biscuits went into the oven, and I poured myself a cup of coffee, staring out the window at the grey dawn creeping over the trees. But my thoughts wouldn't settle. They kept drifting back to him, to that look, that closeness, the way he had stood so near that I could have reached out and touched him if I wanted to. And that was the problem. Part of me had wanted to, and I hated myself for it. The oven timer went off, pulling me from my thoughts. When I pulled the tray out, the biscuits were dark around the edges, a faint scorch on the bottoms. I cursed under my breath, blaming the ancient appliance. But deep down, I knew it wasn't the oven. It was me, rattled by Jericho, in a way I couldn't shake, distracted by the heat in his eyes that had nothing to do with breakfast. Breakfast was quiet at first. He came back downstairs in a clean shirt and jeans, hair still damp, and we sat across from each other at the scratched-up table that had been here longer than either of us. I pushed the biscuits toward him, along with a jar of honey I'd bought at the farmer's market last week. They're a little crispy, I said apologetically. He took one, broke it open, and spread some honey on it, not breaking eye contact. They're perfect, he said, slow and deliberate. And the way he said it made it sound like he wasn't talking about the biscuits at all. My stomach flipped, and I hid behind my coffee cup, taking a sip to cover the flush I felt rising. So, I said, desperate to fill the silence, what's on your agenda today? Work, he shrugged, leaning back in his chair. Day off, he added. Thought I'd stick around. Maybe fix that porch light you've been mentioning. I haven't been nagging, I shot back defensively. It's been flickering for weeks. I've only pointed it out twice a day, he teased, his grin widening. That's nagging, Memphis, he added, and I rolled my eyes. The warmth in my chest wouldn't go away. Fine, fix it then. I'll be out back pulling weeds. The garden's a mess, I said. Jericho nodded, finishing his biscuit. And for a while, we fell into the rhythm of our usual mornings. Plates clinking, coffee cooling, and the soft hum of the radio on the counter. But every so often, I'd catch him watching me again, and it sent my nerves into a buzz, like a hive of bees had taken up residence in my chest. After breakfast, I went to the backyard, needing fresh air and space. The garden was overrun, tomato vines sagging under their own weight, weeds choking out the herbs I planted last spring. I knelt in the dirt, tugging at the intruders with more force than necessary, trying to focus on the task at hand, the feel of the earth under my nails. But my thoughts kept drifting. Jericho wasn't a child anymore. That much was obvious. He'd filled out over the years, gone from the lanky boy who used to trip over his own feet to a man who moved with a quiet confidence that I envied. He'd had jobs, mechanic gigs, construction stints, girlfriends who came and went, a life outside these walls. But he always came back, saying he liked it here. Liked keeping an eye on me. I'd laugh it off, tell him I didn't need babysitting. But recently, his watching over me felt less like duty and more like something else. something that made my pulse quicken for reasons I didn't want to acknowledge. The sun climbed higher, and I heard the screen door creak open behind me. I didn't turn around, just kept pulling at a stubborn dandelion, but I knew it was him. His shadow fell over me, long and lean, and I could feel his presence like a weight. "Need a hand?" he asked, crouching beside me. His knee brushed mine, and I flinched, though I tried to hide it. "I'm fine," I said, my voice tight. "Thought you were fixing the light." "I already did," he replied, pulling a weed from the dirt with ease that irritated me. "Figured I'd come check on you. You've been out here a while." "I'm not some old lady who needs checking on, Jericho," I snapped, sitting back on my heels to wipe sweat from my brow with the back of my hand. "I didn't say you were," he said. And there it was again, that look, steady and unreadable. "Just thought you might like the company." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I didn't say anything. We worked side by side for a while, the silence thick with something I couldn't or wouldn't name. His hands moved quickly and surely, brushing against mine every now and then. And each time, it sent a jolt through me that I couldn't ignore. I told myself it was nothing, just the heat of the day, the closeness of the moment. But the lie felt flimsy, even to my own mind. By noon, the garden looked halfway decent, and I stood up, brushing dirt off my knees. Jericho stayed crouched, looking up at me. The sun caught the gold flecks in his eyes. "You're a mess," he said, echoing my earlier words. But his tone was softer, almost playful. "Speak for yourself," I shot back, nodding at the smudge of dirt on his cheek. Without thinking, I reached out to wipe it off, my fingers gracing his skin. He froze, and so did I, my hand hovering there. The air between us crackled. For a moment, I thought he might lean into it, but he just smiled slowly, knowingly. I pulled back, my heart hammering. "Going to grab a shower?" I mumbled, turning toward the house. "Don't break anything while I'm gone." His laugh followed me inside, low and warm. I shut the door behind me and leaned against it, trying to calm my racing pulse. The shower helped, hot water pounding against my shoulders, washing away the dirt and the tension, or so I told myself. But when I came back downstairs, hair damp and robe tied tightly, he was in the living room, sprawled on the couch like he owned it, flipping through an old car magazine. "Feel better?" he asked without looking up. "Much," I said, aiming for casual as I headed into the kitchen. "You hungry?" I could throw something together. He set the magazine down, stretching his arms overhead, his shirt riding up just enough to show a sliver of skin above his jeans. "Starving," he said. And the way he looked at me then, like I was the meal, made my stomach flip. "Sandwiches it is," I said quickly, busying myself with bread and cold cuts. Anything to keep my hands moving and my mind occupied. He followed me in, leaning against the counter again, and I could feel his eyes on me as I worked. It was maddening, the way he could just stand there, saying nothing, and still unravel me. We ate at the table again, the afternoon light slanting through the windows, casting long shadows across the floor. He talked about some project he'd been working on in the garage, an old bike he was fixing up. And I nodded along, grateful for the distraction. But then he paused mid-sentence and reached across the table, his hand brushing mine as he grabbed the salt shaker I hadn't even noticed was out of reach. "You're jumpy today," he said casually, but his fingers lingered, a beat too long before he pulled back. "I am not," I lied, shoving a bite of sandwich in my mouth to avoid saying more. He smirked, like he knew better, and we finished eating in a silence that felt heavier than it should have. Afterward, I cleared the plates, and he stayed put, watching me move around the kitchen. I was rinsing a glass when he came up behind me. Quiet, too quiet, and I nearly dropped it. "Jericho," I said, half turning. "What are you—" "Relax," he cut in, his voice soft as he reached past me to grab a dish towel. His arm brushed my side and I froze, the heat of him seeping through my robe. "Just helping." "You're not helping," I snapped, stepping away, my breath uneven. "You're in my way." He didn't argue. He just dried his hands slowly and deliberately, holding my gaze. "Sorry," he said, but he didn't sound sorry at all. He sounded amused, like he'd won something I didn't even know we were playing for. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur. I kept busy, laundry, dusting, anything to avoid sitting still with him. But he was always there, hovering at the edges, fixing things that didn't need fixing, asking questions that didn't need answers. By evening, I was worn thin. The tension coiled tighter with every glance, every brush of his presence. Dinner was leftovers, reheated and chilly from the night before, and we ate on the couch while some old western flickered on the TV. He stretched out beside me, his leg pressing against mine, and I didn't move away this time. I didn't have the energy to fight it. The movie droned on. Gunshots, dusty trails, men shouting. But I barely heard any of it. All I could focus on was the warmth of him, the way his breathing synced with mine, the way he'd shift just enough to make me hyper-aware of every inch between us. "Memphis," he said at one point, his voice cutting through the haze, and I turned to find him looking at me, the glow of the screen painting shadows across his face. "What?" I asked, my throat dry. He didn't answer immediately, just studied me as though he were weighing something. Then, slowly, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers grazing my cheek. "You're beautiful," he said simply, like it was a fact. I laughed shakily, swatting his hand away. "Don't be ridiculous, I'm not." He said nothing, but the earnestness in his voice stopped me cold. For a moment, we just sat there, the air thick with something unspoken, something dangerous. Then he leaned back, breaking the spell, and I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The movie ended, and the credits rolled. I stood up, needing distance. "I'm turning in," I said, my voice tight. "Long day." He nodded, but as I headed for the stairs, he called after me. "Night, Memphis." "Night," I echoed, not looking back. Upstairs, I shut my door and leaned against it, my heart pounding like I'd run a mile. The house settled into silence, but I couldn't rest, not with his touch and words looping endlessly in my mind. "I'm his mother," I reminded myself repeatedly. But the mantra felt empty. He's Jericho, and he has a way of making me forget that, even if just for a moment. The next day, Sunday, arrived with grey skies and heavy clouds hanging low over Juniper Hollow like a thick blanket. I woke up late, groggy from a night of restless dreams I couldn't quite remember, and dragged myself downstairs. Jericho was already awake, coffee brewing, flipping through the same car magazine on the couch. He glanced up when I walked in, his face neutral, as if last night hadn't happened. "Morning," he said casually. "Morning," I replied, pouring myself a cup and sitting at the table, keeping my distance. "Sleep okay?" he asked. "Fine," I said, sipping my coffee. "Fine," he repeated, flipping a page. I lied, letting the silence stretch between us. But it wasn't as thick as the tension from yesterday. It felt more like we were both waiting for something to change. The day crawled by. I stayed busy, scrubbing the fridge, reorganizing the pantry, while Jericho worked in the garage, the faint sound of tools clinking drifting through the open window. We ate lunch separately, me at the table with a book, him outside on the porch steps with a sandwich. It felt like things were back to normal, safe, and I clung to that, hoping whatever had shifted yesterday would settle down. But by evening, it started creeping back. I was in the kitchen, chopping onions for stew when he came in, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. He leaned against the counter, watching me. The air grew heavy again. "Smells good," he said, his voice low. "It's just stew," I replied, keeping my focus on the knife. "Nothing special. Everything you make is special," he said. I glanced up, caught off guard by his words. His eyes were steady and warm, and I slipped, nicking my finger with the knife. I hissed and dropped it, and he was there in an instant, grabbing a towel. "Let me see," he said, taking my hand. His grip was firm, his skin warm against mine, and I froze, the sting of the cut forgotten. "It's fine," I said, trying to pull back, but he didn't let go, wrapping the towel around my finger. "Hold still," he murmured, his face too close. My pulse raced. For a moment, I thought he might stay there, but then he stepped back, letting go, and I turned to the sink, rinsing the cut. My hands were shaking. "Dinner's in an hour," I said, my voice tight, trying to fill the space. "Need help?" he asked, his tone soft and probing again. "No," I snapped, sharper than I meant to. "I've got it." He nodded, backing off, and I finished cooking alone. The stew simmered while I tried to calm myself. We ate at the table this time, with the TV off. The quiet was broken only by the sound of spoons clinking against bowls. He didn't push, didn't linger, and I thought maybe we'd avoided whatever it was. But after dinner, as I was washing the dishes, he came up behind me, silent as a shadow. "Memphis," he said. I turned, suds dripping from my hands. "What?" I asked, wary. He hesitated before stepping closer, his voice low. "You ever think about us? What we could be?" My heart stopped. "What are you talking about?" I asked, though I already knew. "You and me," he said, his eyes locked onto mine. "This house, it's always been us, but it doesn't have to stay the same." "Jericho," I said, firm. "I'm your mother, that's all." "Is it?" he pressed, stepping closer still. "I see you, Memphis. Not just as Mom. I see you." I backed up, hitting the counter. My breath was short. "Stop," I said, my voice shaking. "This isn't right." He stopped, hands raised, and nodded. "Okay," he said softly. "I'll drop it." He left the kitchen, and I stood there trembling. The dishwater was cooling around my hands. He'd cracked something open, and I didn't know how to close it. Monday arrived, and I buried myself in routine. I had a shift at the library shelving books, which was a relief. It felt good to be out of the house. Jericho was gone when I left, off to his mechanic job, and I spent the day surrounded by the quiet of the stacks, letting the mundane soothe me. But when I got home, he was in the garage, the bike in pieces around him. "Hey," he said, looking up as I passed, his tone normal. "Hey," I replied, heading inside. Dinner was quick, grilled cheese, and we ate in silence. The tension was still there, but it was muted. Like a radio turned low, Tuesday passed with more of the same. Work, distance, a fragile peace. But Wednesday shattered it. I had the day off, and he came home early, storming in with grease on his shirt, frustration in his stride. "Bad day?" I asked, looking up from the couch where I'd been knitting. "Yeah," he muttered, tossing his keys on the counter. "Boss is a jackass." "Want to talk?" I offered, setting the needles down. He paused, then sat beside me too close. His leg pressed against mine, and I didn't move. We sat there in silence, the weight of a thick, until he turned, his hand resting on the cushion near my shoulder. "Memphis," he said, his voice low. I meant what I said the other night. My chest tightened. "Jericho, don't." "I have to," he said urgently. "I'm not a kid anymore. I see you, really see you. And I don't want to just be your son. I want more." I stood up, heart pounding. "No," I said firmly. "You're my boy. That's it." He stood too, stepping closer. "It's not just that. You feel it. I know you do." "I don't," I lied, backing away. "This stops now." He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "If that's what you want," he said, and walked out, the garage door slamming behind him. Thursday was quiet. He left early, and I spent the day alone, wrestling with what he'd said. He wanted something, companionship, a redefinition, but not the twisted thing I had feared. Still, it was more than I could give. I'm his mother, and that's the boundary I'll always keep. Friday night, he came home late, and I was waiting in the kitchen, the coffee cold in my hands. He stopped when he saw me, wary. "We need to talk," I said steady. He nodded, sitting across from me. "Okay, and what you said," I started. "It's not happening. I'm your mother, Jericho. That's all I'll ever be. You're my son, and I love you. But this thing you're pushing, it's done." He looked down, then met my eyes again clear. "I get it," he said softly. "I pushed too far. I see you, Memphis, and I wanted you to know that." I softened a little. "I know, but it stays here, mother and son, nothing else." He nodded, a small smile breaking through. "All right." Saturday arrived, bright and clear, and we slipped back into routine. Coffee, biscuits, unburned this time. The normal hum was gone. The line had been drawn. He's Jericho, my son, and I'm Memphis, his mother. Whatever he wanted, whatever I had felt, it's settled now, locked away. We'll go on because that's what we do, and I'll never wonder again. I know where we stand.